I'm using ChatGPT to make a beer. It created the recipe, and I followed it to the letter to brew a blonde ale. How did it turn out? Well, I've gone the extra mile here and trained the AI specifically on award-winning recipes. And is the result award-worthy? Let's find out. I have to admit, I've become a little obsessed with generative artificial intelligence. It seems with a bit of prompting, you can create anything, and ChatGPT has become my favorite. I've used it to create the script and code snippets for a video about Python programming. My wife, whose cooking expertise extends no further than the microwave start button, sorry honey, she's used ChatGPT to write a series of cookbooks. Yes, books that tell you how to cook. And she's published them on Amazon. So naturally the question here is, what would a beer recipe generated by artificial intelligence actually taste like? Well, first off, how much does ChatGPT know about beer? Actually, quite a lot. For example, it knows the important stuff like what Brülosophy is. And ChatGPT can do a lot more than recite information. It's creative. I just adore this little song it came up with. With science and passion year after year, Brülosophy, we hold you dear. Yeah, sorry. Now, I want to brew a blonde ale. Does ChatGPT know much about the style? Why, yes. Yes, it does. It knows plenty. And I could come out and just right up ask it to conjure up a recipe, and no problem, here it is. Now, at this point, I need to offer a confession. I didn't want to like this recipe. It's just way too easy to generate, no fancy prompting, and it just came right out with it. You see, this particular AI has come a long way. When I asked the precursor to ChatGPT to create a Belgian beer a few months back, it spat out a very generic answer. But now, using its newer model, this recipe is good. I did initially think it was missing a specific hop schedule with its bittering and aroma additions, but then I spotted those in the directions too. It even provides guidance on strike temperature and when to add Irish moss. Go ahead and brew this up, and I think you'll have a decent beer. But I'm not looking for decent. I'm looking for award-winning, and with some prompting, ChatGPT did tell me this recipe was intended to be a general representation of the style. I wouldn't dream of serving Norm a beer that is merely generally representative. So we need to dig a bit deeper, and that's where a process called fine-tuning can help. If I provide the AI with some examples of what an award-winning blonde ale looks like, it can learn from these examples and come up with its own recipe that incorporates those same characteristics. And the easiest way to do that is to discard the chat part of ChatGPT and interface directly with the generative pre-trained transformer. To do that, I'm using the Playground feature provided by OpenAI. This strips away the chatbot interaction style and simply acts as a conduit between me and the AI itself. And before we get to how the AI generates that recipe, I'm going to mash the beer in because I have the recipe here provided to me from Atlantic Brew Supply, all crushed up. And let's get mashing. Mashing here at 152 Fahrenheit, 67 Celsius. But what is it that I'm mashing here? So what we need to do to build a sensible beer recipe here is to train it to see what a good beer recipe looks like. So to do that, I'm using some award-winning recipes on Brewer's Friend. So here is Brewer's Friend, lots of people putting in their own beer recipes here. I'm going to search for blonde ale. And I'm going to say award-winning beers only, so I'll check that. So now I've got 9 recipes, and each one of these describes an award-winning blonde ale recipe. If I click on one, yeah, you can see here's the stats, here are the ingredients, and so forth. So what I want to do is take this information and feed it into the AI so it knows what an award-winning blonde ale looks like. Now, these recipes all use different batch sizes. We've got 19 liters, 12 gallons, and so forth. So to normalize all of this data, we'll just go with percentages. So we can see here, we have 4 kilos of American Pilsner. That works out as 97.1%. So I'm going to take these recipes and copy and paste them. So I've created a Brewer's Friend recipe converter here. And what this does is you paste in your Brewer's Friend recipe and all of its messy text and all of this extra information that we don't need, like the infusion length and stuff like that. I don't care about any of that right now, or how many pounds are in something. I just care about percentages. And I can tell it that when it sees a recipe like that, I want it to be converted into a recipe like this, with the percentage for the ingredients, hops listed separately from fermentables, and then yeast listed separately as well, and then dispose of everything else. So I'm going to put in the recipe that I'm going to paste from Brewer's Friend. So we'll copy that. So we'll paste that here under Brewer's Friend recipe. And then under converted recipe fermentables, I'm going to press generate. And it should convert that recipe into the format that I want. And what I've done is I've gone through for each one of these beers in Brewer's Friend. So there were 9 award-winning recipes. I've gone through, and in the AI, I've run that to get this cleaned up version of what the recipe looks like. So this is now all of my award-winning blonde ale recipes. So I'm telling it here, create a brand new, unique blonde ale recipe. Then I'm giving it this same format of blonde ale recipe and fermentables, which you will recognize from here. So what it should do now is look at all of this information that I'm passing it, all of these 9 recipes, and it's now learned what a blonde ale is supposed to be, and it should come up with its own recipe. Let's see. There it is. Just at first glance, this looks entirely reasonable. It is unique. It is not in the data set. There is no other blonde ale recipe that looks like this. It has its own unique set of fermentables in it. And for the hops, it's gone for Cascade for everything, which again seems reasonable for the style. I noticed that it has estimated the IBU count. I suspect that that is completely wrong. When the AI suggests something as factual and it's just made it up, that's called a hallucination. And I suspect these IBU numbers are hallucinations. We'll plug this into some beer brewing software and figure that out. But looking at this, I think it's time to brew it. With the mash done, I'm ready to add the hops. I've got all my Cascade here. And those IBU calculations were indeed a hallucination. This 1.5 ounce Cascade bittering edition is going to get me around 26 IBU. Then the 20-minute additional will get me another 5 IBU. Let's add them in. The beer is cooled and transferred over. This is a little warm right now, so I'm just going to chill it down in the glycol chiller. Then add the yeast and ferment this one for a couple of weeks at around 68 Fahrenheit, that's 20 Celsius. Now, just before we get to the tasting, a quick reminder to consider becoming a patron of Brülosophy. By committing to a small monthly pledge, you'll receive rewards like unique discounts at Yakima Valley Hops, an invitation to a live Q&A session, and access to unpublished recipes written by actual real-life people. Okay, time to confess to Norm what he's tasting here. All right, Norm, I've got here a recipe that I didn't brew. Artificial intelligence made the recipe.
No shit. Mm-hmm. So I know that artificial intelligence right now can like write songs, and paint pictures, and all that kind of stuff. It brews beer?
It doesn't brew it, but it will tell you what to add in.
Wow.
So I thought maybe what we would do is I would ask the artificial intelligence how we should evaluate this beer.
Okay.
Look at the appearance of the beer.
Right.
The blonde ale should have a light yellow to golden color and should be clear.
Check that box.
Next, give the beer a sniff to check out its aroma.
Okay.
Blondes are typically light and refreshing with a balanced aroma of hops and malt.
I'm definitely getting malt on this beer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not too much on the hops.
Nope, not really, but very nice malty aroma.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, it's given us 6 steps. So
okay.
Let's see. Step 3. The best bit. Take a small sip of the beer and hold it in your mouth for a few seconds to get a sense of its flavor and mouthfeel. Blonde ales are usually light-bodied and crisp with a balanced flavor that gives hints of bread or biscuit-like malt.
Check, check, and check. And this one is really balanced, but the most pronounced thing, for me at least, is the hops.
Well, okay.
I'm sorry, it's the malt.
Yeah, so this gives me number 4. Consider the overall balance of the beer.
Okay.
A well-balanced blonde ale should have a harmonious blend of hop bitterness, malt sweetness, and refreshing drinkability. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, it checks all those boxes. And the mouthfeel on it is really clean, kind of crisp.
Are you reading ahead?
No, I'm not reading ahead.
Number 5, think about the finish of the beer. A good blonde ale should have a clean and refreshing finish that leaves you wanting another sip.
When you drank 3,000 different beers, You pick up a few things.
Take note of any off flavors or defects that may be present in the beer. These could be things like sourness, metallic flavors, musty or earthy flavors.
Right.
These could indicate that the beer has been mishandled or is past its prime.
Yeah, and I'm not getting any of that. We've talked about this before when we've tasted other beers, that beers that have gone off, a lot of times to me, the flavor that I get is kind of wet cardboard.
Yes. Yeah, I think the wet cardboard thing would have been if I exposed it to oxygen, and this thing has been in a keg the whole time.
Yeah.
You know, I spent 2 years coming up with a new recipe every week. And I'd spent so much time on that, I could have just outsourced it to AI.
Yeah.
Saved myself some trouble.
Well, this is great. I'm glad you invited me for this experiment. The beer is great, but this experiment is really, really cool.
Yeah, well, cheers, Noel.
Cheers to you.